Hello again and welcome to another Mordy and Glory Warhammer 40k video. In today's episode, I want to ask and answer one simple question. Are heavy bolters back on the menu? With the changes in the balanced data slate and the wide availability of this weapon system, I have had a lot of guard players asking me, is it time for the heavy bolter to make a triumphant return? Well, there's only one way to find out. Let's mount up, roll out, and drive right into today's episode. You there, guardsman. Did you know that the Mordy and Glory channel is now officially sponsored by Sharp?
No, sir.
By God, Sharp!
That's right. HarperCollins, the publisher of the Sharp books, has partnered with the Emperor's True Finest as part of the release of the latest tale in the Sharp series, Sharp's Command.
To be commanded by the newly gazetted Captain Gibbons.
To be commanded by the newly gazetted Captain Sharp.
In this brand new novel from Bernard Cornwell, Major Sharp is outnumbered, outgunned with enemies on all sides. Can he and his men save the day? Well, there's only one way for you to find out. Click on the affiliate link down below, get yourself a copy of Sharp's Command, and support the channel today.
That's soldiering.
So first things first, let's just dial things back to basics and go through what is the heavy bolter. In 10th edition, your heavy bolter fires 3 shots at strength 5, AP -1 and 2 damage. It also has the sustained hits 1 ability, which means if you roll any 6s to hit, it generates an additional automatic hit. So for example, if you were to fire 3 shots, you were to miss with 1, hit with 1 on a 4 and hit with another 1 on a 6, then even though you've missed with 1 shot, your total number of hits would be 3 because that 6 gets a sustained hit, which generates an additional automatic hit. Typically, this weapon will either be ballistic skill 4+ when mounted on a vehicle, or if it's being lugged around in an infantry capacity, it'll have a ballistic skill of 5+, but it'll have the heavy special rule. So if it stays still, it gets +1 to hit. Now, primarily, the heavy bolter is considered to be an anti-infantry weapon. That's because of its strength 5. It can wound most light to medium infantry in the game on 3s, and some really heavy infantry it's going to wound on 4s. The problem is that its strength 5 does limit its anti-vehicle capability. Unless you're shooting at particularly light vehicles, you are going to be wounding on 6s. And it's because of this focus on anti-infantry that the weapon somewhat fell out of favor at the beginning of 10th edition. You go back and look at 8th and 9th edition, it was heavy bolters, heavy bolters, heavy bolters. But with the way that toughness has changed with 10th edition and the way that vehicles and monsters became much more prevalent and much more relevant to the 40k meta, you found that the heavy bolters started to fall behind. And a lot of players were no longer including them in their infantry squad heavy weapon teams or weren't having them on the sponsons for their vehicles. This was compounded by the fact that all points in 40k became fixed, they became set. So there was none of this, you start off with 120 points for Leman Russ and then you add on so much for the turret, you add on so much for the sponsons and the las cannon or anything like that. No, none of that. It was just this Leman Russ is going to cost you 100 and something points. And regardless of whether you give it a whole las cannon or you give it a certain set of sponsons, it's going to be 100 and let's say 70 points. And a lot of people said to themselves, well, why would I spend 170 points on a vehicle with heavy bolters when I could spend the same amount of points on that vehicle and get something which seems objectively better, like a multi-melt? I mean, why would I go for strength 5 when I go for strength 9? Why would I go for AP -1 when I go for AP -4? But that was then, and this is now. That was Leviathan and Season 1 of 10th edition, and now we're in Pariah Nexus and Season 2 of 10th edition. And a couple of very important things have changed, which has got people eyeing up that heavy bolter once again. First and foremost, we have the changes to Born Soldiers that came about in the latest balanced data slate. It used to work where if you stayed still, you got lethal hits, and this was really good for artillery because it wants to stay still, safe out of line of sight, blasting away, getting loads of lethal hits. Now it's still lethal hits, but how it's changed is you have to be able to see your opponent, so sorry about that artillery, and also if you have the squadron keyword, then you essentially get lethal hits against other vehicles and monsters, and if you have the regiment keyword, you get lethal hits essentially against other infantry. Now this change isn't all that good for the infantry based heavy bolters, but it's a very, very interesting change for your vehicle mounted heavy bolters, because now what is traditionally an anti-infantry weapon in 10th edition is very much an anti-everything weapon. Because if you shoot this thing at an enemy vehicle or monster and you get a 6 to hit, not only do you still get your sustained hit from before, but you also now get a lethal hit. So the number one weakness of the heavy bolter being its strength, it's no longer a weakness at all. And considering that most Imperial Guard vehicles can mount at least a pair of heavy bolters, you're pretty much guaranteed a lethal hit and a sustained hit each time that you blast away with them. Now, of course, the heavy bolter does still have the issue of only being AP-1. The reason why this can be a bit of a problem is often you will find your opponent is getting the benefit of cover. And so by being AP-1 and you shoot to get enemy in cover, really you're not AP anything. But with a few of the other changes in the balanced data slate, there's going to be a knock-on effect that I think is going to take place in a lot of guard armies where it's going to be very rare that your heavy bolter is only just AP-1. Firstly, there was the nerf to reinforcements. Reinforcements was a stratagem that let us bring back a infantry unit when it died, or a regiment unit, so it could extend a thing like sentinels. And you could do this every phase. If you had a lot of CP saved up, you could bring back a lot of units. I once brought back 3 units at a turn because I had a lot of CP saved up. You can't do that anymore. Now it's once per game. And a lot of guard players are looking at things like the Lord Solar and going, well, what do I spend my CP on now? Well, you're going to spend it on Fields of Fire, which was our second, and in some cases, some people thought our best stratagem. It's definitely our best stratagem now. However you argued it before, where you thought reinforcements or Fields of Fire was better, there's a whole debate going on there. That debate's now closed. Fields of Fire is clearly the better stratagem. What Fields of Fire does is give you an extra AP. So if you shoot an enemy unit and then play Fields of Fire, you don't even need to hit them, you just need to target them. You get everyone else in your army who shoots that unit gets an extra AP. So that heavy bolter is rarely going to be AP minus 1. It's going to be AP 2. On top of this, we are definitely seeing a rise in Hellhounds in the guard meta. They are one of the best hidden gems in the army at the moment. They are an incredibly cheap source of armor save 2+. But on top of this, their ability is very potent. Flush them out means that if you hit an enemy unit with your Hellhound, it no longer gains the benefit of cover. Between Fields of Fire being the only stratagem worth spending your CP on, and Hellhounds going down in points and up in popularity, your heavy bolter should rarely be AP-1. It should either be AP-1 ignoring cover, or it's going to be AP-2. Either way, the opponent's not going to feel the benefits of that cover as much as they would have done. And in some really spicy situations, you're going to have the benefit of both, which is going to make the heavy bolter feel quite punchy. However, it's important to note that all of these buffs can be applied to other weapons in the guard as well. There's nothing stopping you from using Fields of Fire to boost up your multi-melters or your plasma cannons. Likewise, the Hellhound is going to remove cover no matter what weapon system you're using. So what is the heavy bolter bringing to the table that is starting to make people eye it up a bit more? Fundamentally, there are some things that the heavy bolter does better than other weapons. For example, when you compare the heavy bolter to the multi-melter, not only are you getting more shots, but you are also getting a significantly longer range, and you're getting those sustained hits. When you compare the heavy bolter to the plasma cannon, you're not getting the benefit in range, but you are once again getting the benefit in number of shots. On average, a plasma cannon will get 2, the heavy bolter always gets 3, and again, you have that sustained hits. Now, the plasma cannon does potentially have the ability to spike a lot of shots with the blast, and also it has the potential to roll well on the D3 and end up getting 3 shots out of each one, but it also has the potential to only do 2 shots against enemy vehicles. So the heavy bolter is bringing range and reliability in comparison to essentially the other sponsored options that you have. But on the other hand, you could argue that heavy bolters have been able to do this since the start of 10th edition. So what's changed? Terrain. Terrain. It's something I always come back to with these videos. Get your Mordian Glory bingo cards ready. We're going to talk about terrain for a moment. With Pariah Nexus, there has been a whole bunch of new deployment zones, and there's been a whole bunch of new terrain maps that GW have been pairing up and saying are good as part of the GW Tournament Companion. Now, I will hold my hands up here and say that I'm looking at this from a theory perspective, and that this very well may not pan out from an actual gameplay perspective. So if you know differently to me on this next point, please let me know. I'm happy to be proven wrong. But I've had a glance through the new terrain maps, I've had a glance through the new deployment zones, I've had a glance through the new layouts that can go together with this, and it feels like the maps are opening up a little bit. GW terrain in general has always been a bit more open than the likes of UKTC and WTC. But it seems that it's gone a step further now. And there's some classic examples from Leviathan terrain maps where you had like the pocket of death in the middle between the four ruins, and now those gaps seem a bit larger. In fact, I was looking at a few terrain layouts as part of making this video, and there were several instances when I was like, hang on, I could shoot from one side of the board here to the other side of the board. Now, of course, this is just for Games Workshop terrain, but there has been some chit and, dare I say, chat around the water cooler about how these terrain changes are going to impact some of the other standard terrain layouts, such as UKTC. Now, I'm not sure at the time of recording this video whether UKTC is going to start opening the maps up a little bit or closing them down even further. We'll have to wait and see. But the point is here, if terrain does start opening up, and if range once again starts becoming quite an important factor, it's another feather in the cap of the heavy bolter. It will then have range and reliability over a lot of other weapon systems, such as multi-melter. Now, we've thrown a lot of shit at the wall. Let's bring it all together now. So essentially, heavy bolters have received a number of direct and indirect buffs. With them getting access to lethal hits, it solves the strength issue. With Fields of Fire becoming the go-to stratagem for the guard, it solves the AP issue. And just due to their inherent reliability, it gives them a bit more predictability over things like multi-melters and plasma cannons. And with the terrain opening up, the heavy bolters are going to be able to fire for more turns, which will allow them to generate more sustained hits and possibly more lethal hits as well. Well, of course, all of this is just like my opinion, man. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. Are you once again considering heavy bolters for your vehicles? Are you going to be taking those plasma cannon sponsors out, putting the heavy bolter sponsors in on your Lehman Russes, swapping out multi-melters for heavy bolters on your Rogal Dawns? Let me know what you think about this whole thing. If you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to smash that like button and also subscribe to never miss an episode. Would you like to know more? If so, then please consider becoming a channel member or patron. By supporting the channel, not only will you be doing your part, but you'll also be helping me create more content for your viewing pleasure and unlocking a whole host of perks. You get everything from a badge next to your name, custom emojis, but the big one is access to the Mordian Glory Discord server, an online community with almost 2,500 active members. It's always popping off in the MG Discord. We've got channels for army lists, hobbying, tactics, stories, and even a pretty spicy meme section as well. For all you greenhorns that wanted to see the Mordian Glory Hole, today is your lucky day. And joking aside, I do want to say a massive thank you to all of the current channel members, and Patreons. You guys are amazing. Truly the lifeblood of the channel. I could not do Mordy and Glory full-time without the incredible and generous support of my members. So thank you guys so much. And last but certainly not least, I want to say a personal thank you to all of my top tier Patreons. These are the War Masters, the people who have truly gone above and beyond the call of duty. So a heartfelt thank you to Alex Dengal, Bon Vert, Lord Pryor, Mark Panconi, RJ Scorpion, Swordfish Trombone, Try Again Bragg, John Stubbs, Nick Walsh, Diesel Fox, and August Barney. Seriously guys, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Your support is incredible and it makes a huge difference. Thank you so much. That's all for now. Hope you've all enjoyed today's video, and of course, as always, see you guys next time.